So I'll give you an update on my last trip out to Texas and New Mexico. I didn't have the most enjoyable experience overall. A bunch of random stuff just kept happening, little things, little annoyances, inconveniences, upsetting reminders, things like that, just over and over. Kind of one thing led to another. The culmination of the unpleasantries, the GoPro got dropped the last place I was at for sunset, and I didn't realize it till the next morning. So overall, I mean, the trip wasn't a complete wash. I think I got a couple of usable pictures from it. As I was working out the final details for it, though, the only tour they were running in Carlsbad that was not the self-guided walking around the big room in the cave required reservations, and those tickets opened 30 days in advance, and they were usually gone that day. So I was a little bummed to realize I probably couldn't get to see more than just the main room of Carlsbad, but it was something I decided to keep checking on, because I've learned from previous reservation systems that if you keep checking back, you'll find random cancellations. As long as you're flexible enough, you can take advantage of those. So every time I had internet, I was hitting reservation.gov, and sure enough, a ticket popped up for the middle of the week in the afternoon. Yeah, I was gonna cramp my schedule a little bit, but the bonus to driving across the country in your own vehicle and camping out of that vehicle for 4 days in a row at relatively cheap national park campsites is you have some flexibility. If I have to change a night or skip a night or whatever, I'm only out $15 or worse, $20. So it's definitely good to be flexible. If you've never been in any of those big caves, definitely go check them out. Carlsbad has what they call the big room. When you're in the middle of it, in a couple of places, you can see 1,000 feet two different directions. The highest ceiling was, I think, I say 175 feet. And that's kind of crazy to think about. There's such large spaces underground that we don't know are there. But when you're at Carlsbad, I mean, definitely take the time to walk a big room. And that's a self-guided tour. I know at the moment they were doing a bunch of construction in the cave, and only the King's Palace was available. It was still incredible, and it cost a couple of bucks, but it's totally worth it. I'd also recommend that you get there a little bit early. You don't have to take the elevator down to get your tour. Give yourself about an hour and a half before your tour and walk in the natural entrance. It is incredible. Give yourself a little bit of time, take it easy, wear some grippy shoes, and allow your eyes to adjust to the dark. There's a few places where it was kind of steep and the asphalt was a little bit wet, so it got a little slippery. And that was another one of those videos on the GoPro that was lost forever. I did a really cool time lapse as I was hiking in the natural entrance, and it looked incredible. I was like, man, this is a really cool video. Can't wait to get home. Nope. Add that to the list with every other really cool video I took that trip. I'm glad that I ended up getting that ticket for that day, because spending 5 hours in 56-degree temperatures was incredible for the dehydration and heat stroke from the day before. I Didn't have any issues with it after that, and was able to get to Guadalupe that night for 2 more days of camping. I had another amazing night of astrophotography until I broke a tripod and a ball head. So I was down 1 camera and 1 mount, but everything looked amazing. The stars were great. The Milky Way was incredible. I really missed those skies. The next morning I did the Devil's Hall hike from the campground. It was 2 miles up and 2 miles back. You get about a half mile up, and then you're hiking in the wash, which was rougher than I was expecting. You were bouldering some sections, or some sections were more just gravel, but it was really cool. Right before you get to Devil's Hall, it's the section I'd like to refer to as Devil's Corner. I felt like was much more impressive and neater than the hall. And then when I was coming back from the hall, after I turned around, I looked up on top of the ridge, and there's this tiny little arch way up on the ridge. I don't know if that arch has a name. It looked really cool. I was annoyed that I didn't bring my telephoto with me on that hike, because why would I need my telephoto in a tiny little canyon? So maybe next time I'm out there, I'll bring my telephoto just for that. Maybe I'll even hike Guadalupe Peak, though I didn't feel like pushing myself too much after my experience at Big Bend. So I hung around, went through a bunch of pictures, got my car figured out for how to set up the camping a little bit easier than what I had. And then the second night of Astro, and it was also amazing. Sunrise was incredible that morning. I didn't, unfortunately, get very good pictures of it. I tried to hike up the trail for better pictures of it when I should have hiked down the trail out to the visitor center to get a more clear view of what was going on. A lot of the clouds were obstructed by the mountains that were right behind the campground. So hindsight, you win some, you lose some. This trip was mostly losing some. Second night in Big Bend, though, I was able to get my binoculars and the tripod for them working just enough to show some of the other campers some spectacular views of the Beehive Cluster, a few other star clusters, Lagoon, Nebula, at least the slight cloudiness around the star cluster in the middle of it. And then early in the morning, I had some incredible views of Andromeda coming up, way nicer than I get back here in Ohio. So I was glad that I had the binoculars, even though they took up quite a bit of space. But it was definitely worth it. Since my one ball head was busted and the other tripod was broke, I couldn't get my extra tracking mount to be properly aligned to Polaris. So I decided, I'm just gonna mount my camera directly to the mount, set the mount flat on the ground, and get one of those really neat rotating time lapses of the Milky Way rising over the camping area. And it was spectacular, except after an hour I realized that I went to go check the battery. I had the wrong settings on the camera, so my ISO was through the roof from my test shots, but I just forgot to change that. So you can't quite tell in the video where I make that switch. It almost just looks like a stutter from a battery change, so it wasn't too bad to correct after the fact.